You're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. It's more fun to believe. Third year bonus.
Oh my gosh, here we go. What if I told you I just finished recording the last third year bonus and I decided, you know what, I'm just on one. Welcome to the program. This is Me and Paranormal You. I'm your host, Ryan Singer. If you did not listen to the previous episode, I might suggest going back because I'm just going to kind of pick up where I left off on that one. This isn't a two-parter. This will be a standalone. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm getting all juiced up over here. My pipe's got a lot of moisture in it. I'm drinking some DCs, you know, some Diet Colas, getting juiced, getting jacked, getting yak, getting cracked over here. We talked about Bigfoot, Colorado, and we talked about death in the previous episode. I wanted to follow up on some John Keel things from Operation Trojan Horse in this episode as well. So I'm going to read a couple excerpts from that. I gave you kind of just a basic timeline of some UFO things that Keel had been outlining in his book as far as timeline goes. And we're talking about almost 145 years ago is the first report, or 145 years ago is the first reported UFO sighting. And, you know, 140 years. I mean, I kept repeating the time in the last episode. I think obviously because I think it's important to consider. This is not new. This isn't a Johnny come lately to, you know, situation, you know, cue the Eagles song. But there's been a ton of books we're talking like from the 50s and 60s and like even the 40s when it comes to the phenomena and people weighing in, scientists, other things like that, weighing in the UFO, UAP, as some people will call it, but I'm not a UAPologist. I'm a ufologist. If I were to be either of those, and some people might not even say I'm a ufologist. Do I dedicate my entire life to the study of the phenomena? Well, no, paranormal phenomena, I believe my life has been pretty dominated by that for more than a decade now. There's a lot of interesting things. I alluded to a quote that Keel wrote. Again, this is from Operation Trojan Horse, John A. Keel, the classic breakthrough study of UFOs. So far, an incredible book. It's dense. You know, if you've read the Mothman prophecies, this is a little different than that. This is more of a compendium, if that's even the right word. This is more of, I'm feeling so juiced up right now on this DC. This is more of, like an encyclopedic account of the history of UFOs and the studies of such. But I want to read you a quote that Keel writes in this book. This is after he's having a conversation with a contactee. I'll just go from that. And what the contactee says. Okay, well, I'll get to, so Keel is on his way somewhere, right? It's like 8 o'clock at night, 1967, October 4th. It's a Wednesday. Remember, last episode I talked about, Keel postulates that Wendy's? Wendy's are a great place too. God, I've been doing this keto diet. I haven't had fast food in like a month, which is great. Anyway, Keel postulates that Wednesdays are one of the best nights for sightings. So just keep that in mind. So October 4th, 1967, it's a Wednesday night around 8 o'clock. He's driving a rented car along the Long Island Expressway about 20 miles outside of New York City when he notices a large, brilliant sphere of light bouncing through the sky on a course parallel to my own. It caught my eye because I had seen many such lights in many places for the preceding 2 years. There was something special and very familiar about the crystal-like purity of its whiteness, and it was brighter than any star in the sky. On top of it, I could make out a second light, a smaller, fiercely red glow that flickered slightly in contrast with the steadiness of the larger sphere beneath it. Although Kennedy Airport was nearby, I knew this was not the bright strobe landing light of an airplane. I've seen many of those too in my travels. When I reached Huntington, Long Island that night, I found cars parked along the roads and scores of people, including several police officers, standing in the field staring at the sky in wonder. The enigmatic light that had, quote, followed, end quote, me was, I don't know why I do that. I don't have to do that shit. The enigmatic light that had followed me, quote unquote, was joining 4 others overhead. All were low, hovering silently, slowly bobbing and weaving like illuminated yo-yos tethered to invisible strings. "What do you think they are?" one elderly gentleman asked me. "I've never seen anything like it before," the man uttered, marveling that such things could be. "I always thought they were just so much nonsense," he said. I nodded and got back into my car. I had a long way to go that night and many problems on my mind. I seem to have had nothing but problems since I got into the flying saucer business. Now that is how you start a movie. If you're going to make this movie, if you're going to make a movie out of Operation Trojan Horse, I'm pitching this right now, everybody. I'm so juiced up over here. You know, 'cause I did like an hour on an exercise bike at the gym today. I don't think I've ever done that. So jacked. Sorry. That's how you start this movie. That's how the movie Operation Trojan Horse starts. With this scene and then him saying that. You just have to have him say it to the guy, right? I mean, it's not right off the page, but you understand what I'm saying. Or it's voiceover, right? I had a long way to go that night and many problems on my mind. I seem to have had nothing but problems since I got into the flying saucer business. And maybe it's film noir, right? Nothing but problems since I got into the flying saucer business. John Keel himself, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my God. Something interesting too that he talks about in this book, or he writes about rather. That's the correct way of saying that, I suppose. What is writing if not talking on a page? So get over it. Stop, being so critiqueful. Critiqueful? Talking about the Great Chicago Fire and how it wasn't Miss O'Leary's cow, which is the great legend, obviously. And there's Brian Wilson has a song on the album Smile, Miss O'Leary's cow. But anyway, there was a great ball of light that traveled through the Midwest on that particular night. And many different locations suffered fires. This is a thing I have to it's a whole thing I have to research and get into and study separately. And one of the interesting things too that Keel alludes to in this book, and this book's not new, and John Keel has been dead for a handful of years now. I mean he's did so much work in this field, it's bonkers. But let me read you this excerpt and you'll understand what I'm saying. The most popular theory is that flying saucers are born and bred on some other planet and that they visit us occasionally to drink our water and bask in our sun. But all of the available evidence and all of the patterns indicated in the now massive sighting data tend to negate this charming theory. Ufology is just now beginning to come into being as an inexact science, and the field is a disorganized bedlam of egos and controversies and divergent opinions. Wow. So what you have is even back then, a field. I mean, this book, the original copyright, I believe, is 1970 is when this book came out. Was the original. So that's 53 years ago. Wow, holy shit. John Keel wrote this book before this young man was even born over here. And even then you had ego getting in the way of, right? Everybody wants to be the person who did it. Everyone, this is my thing. He talks about the man who invented flying saucers. I thought this is interesting. I just wanted to cover a couple of these things before we got into some more ramblings and rantings in today's episode. I'm probably just going to post this the next day. I mean, I'm just going to be on one, you know. He talks about Major Kehoe from, Air Technical Intelligence, Project Blue Book, etc. I want to get into Ruppelt. I don't know, Ruppelt? Is that how you say the guy's name? This is the guy who invented flying saucers, Captain Ruppelt. In the early years, the Air Force was relatively free with UFO information. I touched on this previously. And Captain Ruppelt lent considerable support. It's Captain Edward Ruppelt. He was head of the Air Force's Project Blue Book in the early 1950s. He wrote a book entitled Report on Unidentified Flying Objects. I believe I've already ordered this book off thriftbooks.com, in which he freely discussed all this. That book, published in 1956, still stands as the best standard reference on the subject. The explosion of public interest in the UFO phenomenon in 1947 attracted many highly qualified professional scientists, researchers, and authors. Working independently, they quietly assessed the incoming evidence and slowly evolved complex theories that accounted for the paraphysicality of the objects. Unfortunately for them, the idea of extraterrestrial visitants had very strong emotional appeal, and the many amateur enthusiasts who were drawn to the subject quickly accepted the ET hypothesis on the strength of superficial, circumstantial evidence and pseudoscientific speculation. Their growing beliefs were augmented by the appearance of the, quote, contactees, people who professed that they had actually met the UFO pilots and had even flown to other planets aboard the objects. Now, Keel's not a big fan of thinking that that is a reality, right? That there's the physicality, the actual UFOs, the flying saucers. What's interesting is the book I just read, UFO of God. Chris Bledsoe at one point, and I don't want to be giving spoilers away on this book. I think you need to read this book if you're interested in the subject matter at all. I think it's one of the best books I've read. I almost said one of the best books I've written. What if I was Chris Bledsoe the whole time? So fingers crossed, we're going to get Chris, who's inundated with media requests. I guess I'm media on the show. Keel's not a big fan of that, but in UFO of God, Chris even talks about that. You got to read that book. I can't recommend it highly enough. So, anyway, so that's Ruppelt. He was Ruppelt, whatever. He was in charge of Project Blue Book in the early 1950s, and he wrote that book. Right, just as a reminder, he wrote that book, Report on Unidentified Flying Objects. Right. And so he wrote that in the early 1950s, 70 years ago. So Ruppelt's book describes how the Air Force investigators made a strenuous effort to fit their evidence into an extraterrestrial framework. In January 1953, a panel of top scientists and CIA holy shit! Am I killing myself over CIA? CIA. Oh God, what's happening here? CIA. So in January 1953, a panel of top scientists and CIA officials reviewed this evidence and rejected it. The evidence, of course, trying to fit their evidence into the extraterrestrial framework, right? So I got distracted by my CIA. Anyway, so instead of grandly announcing the flying saucers from another planet that were visiting us, the panel suggested that the public be re-educated, right? So we talked about this in the last episode a little bit. There was even division within the government on the true nature of the UFO phenomena. Keel goes on to talk about a guy, Dr. Meade Lane. He had his own UFO study in 1947, and he got into the contactee aspects as well. By 1950, he was issuing privately published books explaining and defining the paraphysical nature of the objects and the parapsychological elements of the contactee syndrome. The ET believers rejected his theories and continued their fruitless search for physical evidence. So Dr. Meade Lane also got into the paraphysical aspect, right? Now, that's a whole nother thing where we're going to have to dedicate an entire 30-year bonus to the paraphysicality aspect. Once I've been able to properly wrap my brain around it, if in fact that is something I will be able to do. But I do think that it's a timely exploration of some of the foundational writings and research and in texts of the UFO, UAP phenomena, especially considering everything that's occurring around us at a seemingly rapid pace. Why have I never read Operation Trojan Horse before? That's a good question, because there's a million other books that I want to read and that I have been reading. You read every book when you're supposed to, because that's when you read it. That's what I believe. I was like, why do my eyes hurt? And I'm like, I still have my reading glasses on. So what you have here is, potentially you could say Jacques Vallée, there's other people involved in the conversation, but John Keel he's on the Mount Rushmore of ufology, right? So when you have the modern world today, what's happening now, the slow drip of disclosure happening, you have the competing theories of, what actually is real. You have people who think Dr. Stephen Greer is he's a double agent for the guy. You have a lot of confusion, right? And it's mind-numbing. It is aggravating. It's frustrating. And quite frankly, mostly it's just confusing. So how does a person who may have a full-time job, maybe has one or two children that they're keeping alive, and a spouse or a partner of a domestic nature that they're trying to keep happy, and they're trying to, sleep and maybe take care of themselves and pursue their own interests outside of ufology, how does one keep up with all of this stuff? And maybe you rely on other people who are hyper fascinated and spend a lot of time looking into it and getting into it. Maybe that's how you can do it, and by listening to podcasts. But apparently podcasts are great, right? I think we can all agree that podcasts are great, as we're in a podcast relationship right now as you listen to this, and I appreciate that. So, but I think John Keel is worth a deep exploration. I also have the Eighth Tower book here that I'll be reading immediately after this book, unless I'm compelled. I got these other books. I got Humankind, which was given me by Beth, who owns Viewpoint Books in Columbus, Indiana. I got to read that. It's just the stories about how human beings are so good stories, right? Uplifting stories. I'm really juiced up right now. So, and then I've got The End of Materialism, which I still need to read, which I wanted to read some excerpts from that as well. I started reading that previously, but then I was like, I got to read this. Well, after I read UFO of God. It's impossible to keep up and stay on top of all of these things all at once, simultaneously. But I think trying to understand and getting a basis of knowledge from people who dedicated a damn good portion of their life to studying this phenomena, specifically UFOs, it's worthwhile considering what is happening now. And when it comes to the world of the paranormal, my interests are so varied and so vast. In fact, it was quite late last night. I'm reading this book, and I should have been asleep, but I'm like, I just can't put this fucking book down, which is a great feeling, right? Luckily, I don't have to be up super early for anything in the morning because I've built this life, the night owl life. And I'm thinking to myself, God, my interests in the paranormal have been so vast and so varied. And I jump from paranormal ship to paranormal ship constantly. Sometimes I have, my left leg on the UFO ship and my right leg, on the esoteric alchemy ship, or, the ghost ship, or the shape-shifting ship. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, like, I gotta hone it in, right? I gotta focus on one very specific paranormal topic, and I need to get to the bottom of it. Find the truth. You're right. And that's when you remember, good luck to you, friend. Probably not happening anytime soon. There was a weird laugh coming from outside, and they're probably like, there's a weird laugh coming from inside as they're outside. They're probably thinking that the weirdness is in here, and I'm thinking the weirdness is out there. It's dark out there. I can't see anything. Let's just hope that demon possum doesn't buzz the tower again. Okay, so let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to put some moisture in the pipes, and then we're going to continue this discussion, whatever this discussion is. It's actually, a pretty damn good discussion. Well, it's a damn good idea of a discussion. The actual discussion itself, I'll let you decide. And so we'll be right back. Patrons get commercial-free episodes. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3 a month. You could also do more than $3 a month. You can do as much a month as you want. You could do $1,000 a month if you want. Did you win the Powerball? Are you in California? Are you the California Powerball winner? $1,000 a month. hell, $500 a month. I'm not greedy. And we'll be right back. And we're back. I got to say, I love getting the pipes moist with some Big K DC. If you don't know, it's like you can get 3 12 packs of Big K Cola, Diet Cola for like $12. Especially in today's market, it's a steal. Anyway, I'm not sponsored by Kroger. Kroger wants to throw some money my way. Like, get out of town, Jack. Anyway, we're talking about, continuing the conversation about kind of the history of UFOs, ufology, those who have had a keen interest in the subject, and where they start and where they end up, and what are the implications that it has for us today in today's world, with the advent of disclosure coming from quote unquote legitimate sources from the federal government, from not just our federal government, from governments around the world being more open to this. What does it mean? And because when we start to examine the history of ufology and the reports from ufologists and from doctors, from engineers, and other people who just became hyper fascinated with the subject many years ago, what conclusions did they come to? And are these conclusions part of the reason why the fervor and the interest in ufology, UFOs, and the unknown, specifically in that area, kind of, I guess you could argue, faded away for a bit and had a dip, at least you can say with beyond the shadow of a doubt, at least from the mainstream, there was no mainstream attention. So that's kind of what we're talking about, like where we were when it first happened, 145 years ago, when it started. And I don't know, Keel does not talk fondly of people who want to talk about like, the UFOs in the ancient hieroglyphics. Seemingly early on, I'm not getting him getting a good vibe. I'm not getting a good vibe from Keel on that. Anyway, we can discuss that later when I have more information. The point is, moving forward, you must know the past if you're going to have any chance at trying to understand the future. So that's what we're kind of doing here. And if you know all this, hey, feel free to chime in. So I don't know. Keel is laying out a bunch of well-respected individuals who have academic credentials. They have, they passed the intelligence test, as one might say, when it comes to, are they a kook or are they actually a smart person, right? So he's laying out a list of these people who got hyper interested in the UFO phenomena and then came to the same conclusion that these were not actual physical flying saucers flying around the skies. And another one of those people was an engineer, a graduate of Yale and MIT, who became interested in flying saucers in 1953. Upon his retirement in 1954, he and his wife toured the country interviewing UFO witnesses and inevitably contactee claimants. Bryant Reeve was this guy's name. And like the rest of us, Keel says, he began with the hope and expectation of finding evidence for the extraterrestrial hypothesis. He thought in the same physical terms of all engineers and scientists. But as he plunged deeper and deeper into this complex subject, he reached into philosophy and metaphysics, just as Smith had. Smith was a person he referenced earlier. I'm not going to go through all of these. Finally, in 1965, he published a book called The Advent of the Cosmic Viewpoint. After long and careful investigation, he had concluded that the UFO sightings themselves were actually irrelevant and were merely part of the larger paraphysical phenomena. Kenneth Arnold, the private pilot whose sighting on June 24, 1947, set off the first modern flying saucer scare, quietly investigated UFOs in depth for years, and then in 1955, he too issued public statements expressing his belief that the objects were actually some form of living energy and were not necessarily marvelous spaceships. 1957, Ray Palmer, he starts a magazine called Flying Saucers. It goes on and on. Dr. Leon Davidson, a physicist who worked on the atomic bomb project, became interested in UFOs in the early 50s. Because of his status, the Air Force permitted him to view official photos and movies. Eventually, he got into investigating the bewildering contactee cases. He trained his mind over years and years of education. And then he, too, believed he detected a hoax. He concluded that the controversial contactees were telling the truth as they knew it. But he recognized that these people were being tricked through some hypnotic process. Wow. But he was unable to accept any paraphysical explanation. He pointed the finger at the CIA. And a very small proportion of the data did seem to fit his conclusion, but ultimately it proved to be insupportable. Al Chop, an Air Force information officer, part of the NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. He was an Air Force information officer. He lent his name to the Board of Governors of NICAP, Major Kehoe's NICAP. But in 1966, he withdrew his name, and in personal correspondence and appearances on radio programs, he said he thought it was all butkus. He didn't think that they were real physical machines. Quote, I used to believe in Santa Claus too. Keel is a little biased in some of the things he writes. Obviously, he's presenting an argument, and damn straight, I guess he should be, trying to be convincing. He writes this sentence, which I marked it, or I don't have it marked, but it's compelling. Many other early UFO investigators, most of them far above average in education and intellectual capacity, arrived at similar negative conclusions after long and careful independent study. Harvard astronomer Dr. Donald Menzel recognized that people were seeing something and had tried to explain the phenomena with the restrictions of their own scientific disciplines. He argued convincingly for a mirage, an air inversion theory. I mean, you got Jacques Vallée, you've got Ivan T. Sanderson, Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard. You've got basically what Keel is saying here. He's laying it out. They're paraphysical in nature. He concludes a specific chapter where he's kind of like going off about all this and listening to all these different people. He's like, nearly all of those who have finally come to an understanding of the true nature of the phenomena have quietly abandoned the subject because they found it impossible to articulate their findings and make the incredible credible. They were not silenced by the Air Force or the CIA, as the cultists believe. They were rendered mute by the awesome and overwhelming realization that man is not alone, that the human race is merely a trifling part of something much bigger. What's really going to get you here, what's really going to suck you into the UFO vacuum if you're not already just fully kind of gobbled up in there. In 1969, a man by the name of Dr. Edward Condon, the physicist who headed the Colorado University's Air Force financed 2-year UFO study, said this at his conclusion, quote, "Perhaps we need a national magic agency, pronounced enema, to make a large and expensive study of all these matters, including the future scientific study of UFOs, if any," he concluded. Wow. I mean, a national magic agency. Why would he say that? Because Keel, much like Condon, believes that any real UFO story must encompass all of the many manifestations being observed. He's talking about it being a story of ghosts and specters and phantoms, strange mental aberrations. He's talking about an invisible world that occasionally engulfs us, of prophets and prophecies, dare I say gods and demons. Well, dare Keel say. It's a world of hallucinations. It's a world of illusions. It's a world where reality is no longer reality. It's distorted by strange forces, which can seemingly manipulate space-time and physical matter, forces that are almost entirely beyond our powers of comprehension. Keel's got away with words, I got to tell you. So what you have here is one of the world's most prominent ufologists devoting an entire chapter of his book, not a short chapter, mind you, the second chapter of the book, I believe. Is it the second chapter? It's probably the second. It doesn't matter. It's very early on in this book, which to me would indicate importance of groundwork, importance of a foundational aspect of the argument he's laying out. A litany of intellectual, high-minded people of above average intelligence, as he would say. The fact that, this is 1970. When the book was published, there was still an incredible educational bias towards intelligence, I imagine. Institutional education, I should say, that one could not be intelligent unless they were educated in the formal institutions of the day. So, we all know that's bullshit now, but we don't have to. I'm not going to nitpick 50 plus years ago. Okay, there's no need for that. But let it be stated that I'm aware of the bias in the language. And maybe it's just a thing. Maybe it's just a thing that I got a burr in my boot about it. You know what I mean? So anyway, he's laying out all these people who, dedicated resources, time, effort, and their substantial intellectual capacity to studying the UFO phenomena. And all of them were coming to the conclusion of the paraphysicality of the phenomena, that they were not actual UFOs and flying saucers flying around in the skies that people were seeing, even though they claimed to be seeing these things. The evidence suggests that they are not actually that. We're talking about lights. We're talking about orbs, as I believe they would be called now. If Keel wrote this book in the year 2023, is that the year? I believe he would be saying orbs or balls of light, and he's even talking about balls of light already in this book as the thing that they're seeing. Now, how many of those balls of light are masking an actual physical ship? Who knows, right? Who knows? So what does it mean, right? And it's interesting because the name of his chapter is Forget the Answer, What's the Question? I believe that's the name of the chapter. And so what does it mean? Now, when you have disclosure happening, purported disclosure happening by the federal government of the United States of America. Which, by the way, just a reminder, I don't think government's a bad word. I know in today's modern world, it somehow has become a bad word. When the people who run the government are, often controlled by larger forces of money and what it takes to get elected. Sure, but government at its base, at its base level, they're your neighbor, our neighbors, your city government, your county government, your state government, etc. Government is a necessary function of living in a society that has a population over 12 people. Anyway, okay, so what are the implications if in fact maybe there's not pilots flying these ships? Maybe there's no ships at all. They are not possibly coming from a star system far away. Where are they coming from? It's energy. Huh? Is that what you're saying? It's a form of energy. It's paraphysical. Interesting. What does that mean? Well, we can get into the interdimensional aspects of this discussion. We can talk about worlds lying on top of worlds, occupying the same quote-unquote space, even though they're not. Keel gets into the spectrum of light, what the human eye can see, what we can perceive. And I have this thought a lot. It's a thought about, sanity. What is real? What's not real? What's crazy? What's sane? And if you think about it too much, let me clarify. If I think about it too much, I whip myself into a frenzy that makes me feel like I'm spinning off the globe, chasing my own tail too quickly, that now I have taken flight, and now I'm just spinning off into space. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's a snake pooping its own head. Or is it a snake eating its tail? I don't know the answer, obviously. I mean, if I did know the answer to this question, I'd be on Stephen Greer's next documentary. And as of yet, I check my email 4 times a day. No emails from Dr. Greer. I should see if I can get Dr. Greer on the show. I mean, we got bigger things to do, I suppose. But, excuse me. So what does it mean for disclosure? Are people willing and are they ready to, if Keel is on the right track with all these other intellectuals who over the years are saying there's a paraphysical nature to the UFO phenomenon, that there's not actually UFOs. They're not actually coming from distant stars and traveling through space-time to get here, that it's an energetic thing and somehow it's been here this whole time. And even if we can't perceive it, it is already here and it sometimes interacts with us and it is in control of and even has fun with. And also, in addition to that, sometimes takes pleasure in creating distress and even harm to us. This phenomena is all around us, always has been, right here, right now. Are we able to shed the shackles of our belief, holding us down into believing that aliens are flying physical ships from a different star system? Are we able to, first of all, to even try to get people to wrap their brain around that, if it were true, which, again, I will say the Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash, physical ship, right? Or is that an illusion? Is it an illusion that leads to a great delusion? Can we move past that collectively? We're talking about a group of billions of people on this planet. And I would argue, I don't know the number, but not everybody believes in UFOs and aliens. Everybody believes that they're probably possible to some degree, outside of maybe hyper-religious people who just refuse to even entertain such ideas, unless they framed them under let's say organize them under the framework of God creates everything, so God, right? Which, is possible. I know people who do that. And they're entitled to their beliefs as well. Who is God? God creates everything in the universe, right? So I suppose. Anyway, if that's what their belief is, then of course it makes sense. But there are certain religious people who probably won't even entertain the idea of aliens. They think human beings are one and done, baby. One and done. We're it. We're the top of the pyramid. Right? Pun intended, or not pun intended, but, illusion intended when it comes to using the pyramid there. So, can people, first of all, you can't even get everybody to believe that there's ships and that there's aliens. So now you're telling me you want to get everybody to believe that there's no ships, there are no aliens, there is only energy pretending to be ships and aliens sometimes. And then other times pretending to be fae or maybe Sasquatch or some other paranormal phenomena. That it's all intrinsically the same energy that has created all the folklore, the myth, the legend, the counterculture in many ways, and culture, and also in many ways, in many cultures, this stuff isn't forbidden to never speak of such a thing. It's heresy. No, it's part of the culture. It's part of the it's part of the fabric of. That's what I mean to say. It's part of the fabric of the culture. So I'm not trying to be skeptical. What I am trying to be is realistic in trying to understand what it would take for the general populace to jump past believing that UFOs and aliens are real and go straight to there's an energy we don't understand that is potentially interdimensional, of hyper intelligence, much greater intelligence than us. It can manipulate our surroundings. It can travel through spectrums of light, seemingly at will, creating illusions, appearing to be UFOs and or aliens in our skies, even creating physical reactions to these things. When Keel talks about, the essentially having like radiation burns and things like that from people who are, contactees and have close sightings, can create a physical reality from energy that is not real, but it is a reality that they've created. They're putting on a show. They're posing as this. They're posing as that. They are transforming. They are shapeshifting. They are becoming whatever they want to be you to see. And you have physical reactions to the thing that they want you to see that they will be, or it will be. You want the general populace to just go straight to that. And I'm telling you that might be an uphill battle. Can you imagine President Biden at his next State of the Union address? And it doesn't even matter, right? Let's say you hate Joe Biden. Let's say it's Donald Trump. Let's say it's Hillary Clinton. Let's say it's Bernie Sanders. Let's say it's any of these people. It could be Putin. It could be any of these people. It could be Zelensky. It could be anybody, right? It could be someone you love. It could be someone you hate. Imagine any of those people at a podium saying that we're here to disclose the truth about UFO phenomena. There are no such thing as UFOs or flying saucers. But there is an undefinable energy of higher intelligence that can appear to be UFOs or aliens or anything it really wants, and can also create such an illusion of such things that you will have a physical reaction after the illusion has been, quote unquote, performed. Wow. I mean, I'm not saying we don't get there. I'm just saying, hubba, hubba, hubba. Are you? I don't know if you're following any of this. I don't know if I'm following any of this. It's fascinating to think about. And this is just like, these are, granted, I've been into this subject and paranormal phenomena and, the problem of death and immortality and what does forever even mean and all these other things for quite some time. And I spend most of, if not all, with the exception, I do read some comedy stuff, comedy books and biographies and things like that in the history of comedy, which I'm also fascinated by. But when it comes to like the history of parapsychology or the Philosophical Research Society or even theosophy and some of these characters that are, Helena Blavatsky, HPB, for example, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, who has been known to, fabricate some things apparently. And, at the end of the day, the trickster is part of the paranormal. And what we are begrudgingly accepting as we move further and further into the murk on this is that is intrinsic in potentially even the characters involved. Even those who are uncovering the trickster nature and the just, frustratingly complex aspects of the unknown, they too can be a little bit tricky from time to time. I'm going to do my damnedest never to trick you. Okay? I mean, there's times where I think to myself, okay, I witnessed a woman shapeshift. You can go back and listen to that episode. If this is one of your first times ever listening to this podcast, I would implore you to do that. Experience number 76, Interview with a Shapeshifter is the name of it. It's easy to find on YouTube. It's easy to find on all the podcast formats. I don't have a paywall or none of that stuff. You can go back and listen to the very first episode. That's where I describe it. Or you can listen to the interview I have with her. Okay, so I've seen a woman shapeshift twice, where I was witness to the effects of shapeshifting twice. Did I really see it twice? That first time was much different than the second time. Was I just fucking crazy for a moment? Was I seeing things? Was my mind playing tricks on me? Was it real? If I were to go under hypnosis, what would I describe? If I could go back in time to that night, would I, under hypnosis, give the same detailed account of what my memory of it is? If I were to go under hypnosis for the second time, what would it match up, right? It's something I've been thinking about doing, actually. So, it's such a strange thing to experience something strange that you're often left wondering, would I even pass a lie detector test? Because the sensation of knowing it is unlike any other truth that you know. Knowing the truth that my name is Ryan feels so different energetically than knowing the truth that I have been around someone who changed their physical appearance without any control over it twice. The feeling of knowing that I identify as a man, or that I'm currently in the state of Ohio as I record this. Knowing that truth feels different. The sensation is much, much different. Knowing that and knowing it's true and being able to I can hold on to this. I can really hold on to this because I know this is true. That feels different than knowing that when I was in Florida in 2019, I heard something scream at me that I have never experienced in my life before. I know that is true too, but it feels different, right? It's not a truth that you can hold on to and grip on so tightly that you can feel like, even in those moments where you might having a panic attack or extreme anxiety where you feel like, am I going crazy right now? And then you're like, okay, I have to hold on to something I know is real. I'm in Ohio. And hold on to that. Can I hold on to I was screamed at by an unknown creature in the dark, in the woods, alone? Can I hold on? I can't hold on to it the same way. It's slippy. It's slippy? It's slippery. Slippy works fine too. That's what I'm talking about earlier when I was referencing, crazy, what's real, what's sane, what's fake, right? So when it comes to the world of the paranormal, wow, it's hell-bent on chaos, and it's hell-bent on confusion. And it's part of it, and we accept it begrudgingly at best. And to leap over the UFO alien part and go to something that is more abstract, and I would argue a little more slippy than even UFOs and aliens, this paraphysicality, this energy idea is more slippy than a UFO with an alien flying it is slippy. On the scale of slippy, that's more slippy. Swamp gas, still pretty damn slippy. All right. Okay. I've talked enough for a night. Into a microphone alone. I'm whipping myself into a frenzy over here. Jacked up on Big K DCs. Talking about energy, paraphysicality, shapeshifters, creatures in the night, ETs, flying saucers, Colorado Bigfoot. We think it's real. What else is real? Wednesday, October 25th, I will be doing a live stream from Poasttown Elementary School on and off throughout the night on my Instagram. So follow me at Rysing, Rysing, on Instagram. Poasttown Elementary School is where I recorded The Supernatural. It was filmed by Stephen Fine Arts, directed it. Blonde Medicine was a production company behind it. We loved it. It was fun. Thank you to everyone who came out to that special. It's free on YouTube now. The 1-year anniversary is what we're celebrating. Or what I'm celebrating by doing a live stream at Poasttown. So I hope you jump on and hopefully we catch something spooky, something fun, something paranormal. Might just happen while we're live streaming it. So check that out. Please spread the love on The Supernatural. Share it with friends. Give it a like. Hit subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm posting episodes of The Bridge over there. I'm also currently editing Fitz, Friends in the Sky, Tales from Mutilation Ranch, the documentary that I helped shoot in January. I'm currently editing that as well, making good progress on that. So I don't have any live shows coming up soon, but I'd love to see you on the live stream. And thank you to the patrons, commercial free, over at patreon.com/Ryan Singer. $3 a month, plus other goodies and good stuff over there. And if I don't see you at the live stream on October 25th, that's a Wednesday night, I'll see you at the watering hole on the astral plane.